The government already spends more than it receives in revenue. In the last few years, this has resulted in a widening budget deficit, with government having to borrow to finance the gap. Analysts admit that for many, personal inflation is much higher than the official 6.4%. But still, they say government can simply not afford to pay above inflation wage increases.
I think that if you look at the currency that continues to weaken, it bodes negatively for the price of fuel. It bodes negatively for the price of food. So people will increasingly feel that they're paying more in the retail shops when they go to buy stuff. And for that reason, they will always ask for more money from the government. And I don't think the government wants to set the precedent that we can do above inflation cost in terms of the wage bill for the government, which is already very high.
Government spends roughly 40% of its budget on wages. Economist Azar Jamin says it's important for this not to increase. Government has already indicated that in order to keep the budget deficit in check, it will only be able to raise wages by around 6.4%. But there's concern that political pressure may force the government to exceed that percentage.
If the government were to succumb to increases above inflation, there is little doubt that the deficit reduction program would be thrown to the wind. Credit rating agencies would then be inclined to reduce the credit rating on South Africa's government bonds. That in turn would mean that the government would have to spend more on interest payments, on financing the shortfall between what it spends and what it raises in taxes. And we would end up having even less spending on vital social infrastructure areas such as education, healthcare, and even social grant.
Jamin says he worries that following the 5-month platinum miners' strike earlier this year, public sector workers may feel emboldened to strike next year if their demands are not met. He says if such a scenario were to unfold, it would be a bad start for 2015 in an economy that's already reeling from a poor performance. Nompumelelo Siziba, SABC News, Johannesburg.